Oh boy, I was streaming this whole. I've been streaming for half an hour, over half an hour now, just to realize that now with the new YouTube Live thing, you have to actually click go live on their website as well. I already did half an hour of mastering. I'm crying right now. Inside. Um. So yes, hello again. Welcome to this stream. I guess I will start over then. And so here's the video you guys have been waiting for. Every time I was asking what video I should make, someone, at least one person was saying, do a video about mastering. So here it is. I was working on, because I have some Premasters laying around from like old releases. So I thought I would just take the Orgelorg VIP Premaster and master that, and maybe something else from the EP. And I was gonna do one like in-depth master and then one just a quicker one, which is what I do. Like for my final release version, I would do a more in-depth master, but usually for the playable versions, I just do it kind of quick. But what I wanted to say about mastering in general is that mastering is the only purpose of mastering is basically to make your song louder. It's not to improve your EQing, it's not to improve your mixdown, because if you want to improve something with your EQing and your levels, your mixdown, then you should go into your mixdown and fix it there, like fix it in the elements themselves. Because let's say you have multiple elements layered and you put an equalizer on the entire master, then it's gonna also EQ all of the elements, whereas the problem might be just in your kick, or it might be just in your clap. Like let's say you have a kick and a sub bass, and you wanna, well, they kind of play on similar frequencies. So if you bring up the lows on the entire master, then you bring them up for the kick and for the sub bass. Whereas you should actually go into your mixdown and fix it there, like fix it specifically just for the kick or just for the sub bass. Yeah, so this is some advice before we go into actually mastering. And like I said, the goal of mastering is to bring out the maximum volume of your track without losing too much dynamics, without making it sound like trash, basically. So you want to always kind of stay right below the line where it starts to clip and where it starts to sound bad. And also you want to make sure you preserve enough of your dynamics, because I mean, you spend all this time doing your mixdown, and then if you just break wall your master, then you kind of did all that work for nothing. So if you have any questions about the mastering while I do this or up front, let me know in the chat. Welcome everyone who's just joining now. I was wondering why there were only like 7 people and nobody was really interacting with the things I was saying. And then I find out that I wasn't even streaming. People are saying there's a little bit of lag. I don't know why. My internet connection is pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. Also, I wanted to say that I also do private lessons, like tutoring sessions on my Patreon. So if you want to join that, I put a link in the description. I also have a private Discord server where all the people from Patreon can join. and you can see all the different tiers and all the things that I give away. I give away 2 tracks per month that I make specifically just for the Patreon people. So shout outs to everyone who's supporting me there. Really appreciate it. Yeah. Let's get started. I will switch to the Ableton screen now. I hope the quality is good enough for you to see everything I'm doing. Let me know if not. And I also hope the microphone levels are good. Let me check in the chat also. Welcome Madgun, welcome Wolfbark95 Rules, welcome Juan Flamenco, Christian 97971, Awesome Skyscraper Project, and everyone else. Bonjour Samplifier also. Hello VIPs. Yeah, let's do this. Dark mode or light. This is dark mode on Mac and light mode on Ableton. During daytime, it's light mode time, and yes. So what I did so far, I have a multi-band dynamics here. I'll start from scratch. So let's let me just save this as a mastering patch from livestream. Okay, so I'll remove all this. And here's what the Org VIP Premaster sounds like. It's pretty quiet. So when you make a Premaster, before you go into mastering, make sure that your track is pretty quiet. You can have a wave file rendered out where it's pretty quiet, so you have a lot of headroom, a lot of room to work with. I don't think it really matters like how much dB headroom you have, as long as nothing is clipping. And as you can see here, nothing is going, like, nothing is clipping. So this is what it sounds like now. It's pretty quiet. And giving away that patch doesn't really make a lot of sense because it kind of is specific to how your mixdown is, and so like it really depends on the track and how you should make your mastering. This is why like there's not really a universal mastering patch, because it doesn't make sense. Like it depends on the style, it depends on how you mix your tracks down. Like if you like loud claps, then already a universal mastering patch wouldn't make sense because it would like compress your claps too much or whatever. So you would always have to make adjustments, and then I think it just makes more sense to start this from scratch every time, basically. Unless you have like the same mixdowns in every single track. Yeah. So let's start this with a utility just so I can bring up the volume in general. And I also usually have a glue compressor, the range turned all the way down so it doesn't actually compress anything. I just use it for the soft clipper. And the soft clipper basically softens the clipping sound, so it kind of makes clipping sound a bit less clippy, which is, in my opinion, a good technique to make your stuff louder. And you can also use this, for example, on this method of like a gain and then a soft clipper on like bus channels and things like that. If you use it on bus channels, you would usually need another utility, bring the volume up, the soft clipper, then bring it down, and then you basically get that clipping sound that sometimes sounds nice on bus channels. Like let's say if you want to give all your drums together a little bit of that clipping characteristic, that like sound. Then you could do this by using a utility to bring the gain up, then a soft clipper, and then bring the gain back down, just so you don't push super loud levels into your maximizer, into your master. So here, as you can see now, it sounds like it's clipping, but it's still quiet. But this is not for the master, because on the master we actually want to go up to 0 dB. So I would just bring it up. At this point, I would just bring it up to a level where it sounds comfortable, and it's like still pretty far from clipping. So like in this case, the clap is super loud, so it doesn't really matter that it's clipping like just slightly. So I just brought it up a little bit just because this is so quiet. And okay. Then I really like the multiband dynamics plugin for mastering. There, in FL Studio there is Maximus, which is basically similar. I used to use the Isotope Ozone Elements, but now recently I got the advanced version, so I'm going to be using that as well in this video. But it's definitely not necessary. There are definitely other ways to do it. It's just a nice addition and a nice like modern mastering plugin that does a good job at maximizing your tracks without losing too much dynamics. Yeah, I really like Ozone. So I'm just going to put it in here now, but I'm going to leave it disabled for now, just so I can show you that you can definitely master just fine without having to buy like super expensive plugins or whatever. So let's get this started. I also, for when you master, you would usually loop the loudest part so that, like, let's say I took a quiet part and mastered it and made it as loud as I needed, and then there's a louder part later in the track, then that would clip. So you use the loudest part as a reference for mastering, which is this with the drums. So I usually go over here and just see where, like, try to compress it so that, well, basically what compression does is you set the line, the threshold, and let's say I set the line to 24 decibels, then anything above decibels gets compressed by the ratio that you select here. So if, like, let's say the sound goes 4 decibels over that 24 decibel threshold, then it gets compressed. If I set it to 1/2, let's say, then it would get compressed by exactly half. So 1/1, it doesn't compress it at all, it just lets it through the way it is. 1/2, it basically divides that level over 24 decibels by 2. So if I set it to the maximum, which is infinite, then it's basically just a limiter. So it basically divides it by infinite, so it just cuts it off, basically. That's what a limiter does. And if I set it to 100, it divides it by 100, and so on. I hope that makes sense. So in this case, I just usually select like something like 2 or 3, something between 1.5 and 3, I guess. And then I would just see where I need to set the threshold by ear, and then bring the general level of that band back up. So basically the multi-band dynamics, what's nice about it is that you can separately compress your highs, your mids, and your lows. So it just gives you a little bit more control than a maximizer or just a general compressor. So as you can tell now, because it compresses it so much, those highs get pretty quiet, so I need to turn them back up here. And basically what you want to achieve is that you compress it just enough that it doesn't sound too flat, but also compress it enough that it's loud enough. And as a reference for if you want to see if your track is loud enough yet, you can use tracks as a reference that you know that they're loud and that they have a good mix down and mastering. Like for example, I like using Virtual Riot tracks as a reference because I know for a fact that he's really good at mastering and at mixdowns. So yeah, I just like going to one of his tracks and seeing how loud they are and then going back to mine and just seeing if I need to bring out a little bit more volume. But it also depends on the tracks and the style you're going for. Like if you like having really loud and punchy kicks and claps, then you're gonna have to have the general feel of the volume a little bit lower so that those kicks and claps can really like punch through the master. In this case, back when I made Orgelorg VAP, I used to do my claps super loud, so now I wouldn't really do that anymore, but I don't have the project file from that anymore, and so in this case I would just compress it quite a lot so that it kind of sounds a bit more flat, and I don't really mind if it does that. Because I wouldn't make my claps that loud anyways now. Also, this video is gonna be uploaded to my channel afterwards. And thank you for the congratulations on my wedding. That's also the reason why I haven't been making that many videos recently, because first I had my wedding and then I went to LA for a couple of days for the Disciple Bandcamp week, of which we're gonna have some more footage very soon. Alright, and then when we have that, we can basically go to the time control and speed up the time, which basically reduces the attack and the release of this. You could control them separately, but I just like using this time knob because it's quick and easy. And basically, you can hear as I raise this, as I turn this up. It kind of makes the whole thing a little bit more snappy. Just because it reduces the attack times and everything here. Well, it actually makes them longer. So that let's say there's a kick and it has to reduce the volume of that, it would reduce it a little bit later, which makes everything sound a little bit more snappy. Because it lets through that initial attack bit of the kick. And I like how that sounds in this case. Okay, so then basically what I can do now is just to turn up the volume until it's like right before clipping, or I can use the maximizer from Ozone 8. So if I want to do a quick master, just for like playable versions or whatever, then I would just bring up the output gain here, and it's basically done. And if I want to do a master for like a release, then I would use ozone and actually like get a bit more in depth with the maximizer, especially here. So let's just do that, and then it just brings out a little bit more volume here. Oh, I'm also, the input level here is clipping, so I'm just going to turn that down. And then And yeah, I like that. And here, these controls, I like using modern and transient. You can play around with this a little bit if you have the Ozone 8. I just think modern and transient make it sound pretty snappy. You can also use a target LUF, which I never have. Someone was asking how to get the -1. I never really paid attention to this stuff, but I mean, if you want to, this is probably gonna make it really loud. Yeah. Okay, so it was at 8.9. And here the dynamics were basically replaced by the multiband dynamics thing. And then if you want to change the EQ, I would say usually you would have to do that in your mixdown, like I said at the beginning. But in this case, since I didn't have the project file anymore, I could like do some equalizing fixes in here. So like I could bring out the sub bass a little bit. But something that you should do also is to go into your mid side. If you don't have ozone, you can also do this with, let's say, Pro Q, the Fab Filter Pro Q2, for example. Here you can switch it to mid side and then put a low cut and low cut it at somewhere between, let's say, 150 and 250, but just on the sides. It gives you a little bit more headroom, and it just cleans it up a little bit. Just so you can hear what it does, I'm gonna make it pretty extreme. So I would just go by ear and hear where it sounds too flat, like too mono, and where it's still okay. So I would say it was like about somewhere here, and it just gives you a little bit more headroom. And then also put a low cut on here below the area where you can't really hear anything anyways. So below like 30 Hertz, you can't your human ear can't really hear anything anymore. So you might as well cut it to give it a little bit more headroom. You can do the same thing with ozone. Whoops. Since I already have ozone here, I can go to the mid side, to the side control here, turn this down, switch it to high pass, make the slope a little bit steeper, and then switch and put it on like somewhere like 30, and then, oh wait, this is for mid side, then actually like I said, maybe like 250. And then for the general master, let's put it at like 30. And then you might be able to turn it up a little bit more. I actually think I might have compressed the sub bass a little bit too much, so I'm just gonna fix that here. Oh, Chillax 3000 said that the EQ8 also has a mid-side mode. So there you go, you don't even need the fab filter, you can just go to the, here it is, mid-side, and do the low cut here, like this. Turn the adaptive cue off. I just don't like this, like it's not really a clean low cut. It's kind of like the curve is too round here. I like having kind of like clean cuts, but yeah, this is one of the reasons why I love fab filter so much, and you can have infinite points rather than just 8. And yeah, fab filter is one of the Pro Q2 is one of my favorite plugins in general. So yeah, there we go. We're basically done. Maybe in this case I would push the volume a little bit less, just because it makes the sub a little bit too clippy sounding. Whoops. Well, let's try out this transient emphasis. Oh, it kind of really tries to bring out the kick a bit more, but because it's already so loud, it can't really do it, like the transients. Yeah, pretty happy with this. So there we go. Does the 30 Hertz cut make a difference on festival speakers? I don't think so. I mean, this is something that when you made your track, you already couldn't really tell that there was something below 30 Hertz. So if anything, it would make your track sound, if you actually could feel it, then it would sound different than it sounded when you made it. And I think kind of when you made it, it's like the way you would want it to sound on big speakers as well. So I think since the sub bass on a like a E synth is at around like 50 Hertz and not really lower than that, it's fine. Like you can hear the 50 hertz just fine when you cut it below 30. And it would only really make a difference if you have a really low sub, but then you probably couldn't hear it on your home setup anyways. So yeah, there we go. That's how I would master this track. So basically, utility just to bring the levels up a bit, multi-band dynamics to compress everything and the bands separately, then ozone to cut the lows below 30 hertz and to cut everything below in this case 250 hertz, whatever sounds the best to you. Just go by ear, really. A maximizer to bring out the maximum volume, and a soft clipper, which I don't need anymore now because the maximizer already brings it to exactly 0. So this was just kind of to keep it soft clipped in the process of the mastering, but we don't really need it anymore now. And the fab filter was also just to demonstrate the same process that I did with the ozone EQ in a different equalizer. I mean, Colox says it depends on which speakers you have, and it definitely does, but most speakers, like, you would want most people to listen to the tracks you make. Well, realistically speaking, most people are gonna listen to the tracks you make on some, like, consumer grade speakers or headphones, and those are not gonna be able to go below 30, so it doesn't really make sense to make your tracks like that. It would be such a specific thing that nobody's gonna be able to listen to and appreciate the things you put in your music if it's like targeted at such a specific audience. Unless you want to go for that, then fine. But if you want a lot of people to enjoy it with their consumer grade gear, then you should also target your sound at that. Also, I don't use monitors at all anymore. I just use headphones now. And I've been doing that for the last 1.5 years. And I switched to these ones like a couple months, maybe half a year ago. And they're honestly really amazing because they're noise cancelling, and I do everything on these now. Like, these are not even studio headphones, these are basically consumer headphones, but they sound really nice, and I like making music on consumer headphones or like DJ headphones because I feel like they're gonna actually like accurately represent how something is gonna sound on a system. Whereas I feel like when I make something with studio headphones, which sound pretty flat, it's gonna sound completely different on big speakers, and I don't really get the point of that. Yeah, I don't know. These are kind of like accurate enough, but also colorful, and they have a lot of bass, and they have noise cancelling, which is amazing because now I can also produce in airplanes and in trains and stuff, and that's something that suits the way I work and the way I like to work. So yeah, it's just kind of about finding what's most comfortable for you, and I don't like when people argue like this is the best thing for making music because this and this and this, but it's really just like the best thing for your specific situation and the way you like to make music. So if you want to tell me like you need these speakers to make music, it's like, no, I don't need speakers to make music. For me, headphones is the the best thing and the thing I feel most comfortable with, and the thing where I can produce wherever I need to in the moment, because I'm not at home that much. I travel a lot, so it's perfect. Obviously, I love recommendations, but yep. I also have produced with Beats before, the Beats Solo 3, so, and the tracks were sounding okay. If you have any questions about this whole mastering process, let me know. I think we're pretty much done, unless you wanna, unless you have questions or you have suggestions for things you want to see. I'm gonna definitely upload this video to the channel after this, because I wanted to make a video about this anyways, and I just feel like live streaming is a little bit of a nicer approach to this, because I can like interact with you guys, especially when I sit in front of the computer. You cut the low, but why don't cut the high 18 kilohertz plus, which is useless too? Basically, I recently did a hearing test online where I found out that I can actually hear up to 20 kilohertz, and I've always found that cutting stuff off at 18 is like, it makes it sound a little bit too like dampened. I know that most people can't really tell, but I personally can, and it does make a little bit of a difference in the crispness. I guess I could cut it off at 20, but at that point it doesn't really make that much of a difference for the headroom anyways. What to do concretely when your track doesn't sound loud? Turn it up, or yeah, I mean, if it starts clipping too early, then you have to fix it in your mixdown, because then there's something wrong with your levels. Like, let's say you have a very loud kick, and then you try to push the master and make it louder, but then your kick sounds very starts sounding very bad very early when you try to push it. Then you should go into your mix down, turn your kick down, and then you can bring up the master in general. And if you cannot, because like in my case, I don't have the project file anymore, then you can just compress it, and then it would turn it down and let you go louder without clipping, without getting that like clipping sound to it. Especially if you compress the bands separately, you could like compress your kick kind of separately from your mids and your highs, because the kick mostly plays in the lows, so you compress that a little bit more, and then you can bring out your mids and highs more, and whereas the kick still stays relatively low without clipping, so you can bring everything out more but keep the kick on that level that is too loud, if that makes sense. How to make it sound fuller even when you want to make the track simple? That's kind of a mix down slash arrangement and sound design question, which is not really a question for this video because it's kind of a big topic and it's kind of a lot of philosophy in a way. It's just kind of a big topic, and I would like to talk about that in a separate video. How to fix auto-tune delay. I am not sure what that is, to be honest. How do you choose your rack and which order to put your elements in? Basically, it just kind of makes sense because, so in this case, the utility is just to turn everything up a little bit without actually compressing anything yet. Then the multi-band dynamics, it just makes sense to, at this stage, compress everything before you actually try to just get the maximum volume out of it. Because let's say you put the maximizer before the dynamics, then you already lose dynamics that you could preserve when you use compression because you maximized it before it. So you would usually do the compression before and then try to get the maximum volume out of it after it. And it just kind of makes sense like that. What are some issues that can occur in the mixdown that could cause you not to get the loudness you want in a master? If your levels are off, especially the low end is very the low end is the one that usually causes the clipping first. So like, let's say your kick, like I said before, your kick is very loud compared to the rest of the track, and you try to push the volume and it starts clipping. It's a lot of times because of the kick or because of the sub bass. So you would have to fix that in the mixdown and then try again. Other than that, I don't really think there are that many issues. I mean, it's mostly about preparing your mixdown in the right way, kind of with mastering already in mind. So you would already kind of try to make it as flat as possible and adjust the levels as much as you can in order to like not have elements that already stand out like crazy, that where you already know that they're not going to work when you try to, or where you already know that they're going to clip very early when you try to push the master. So yeah. Let's see. In sound design, I find that struggle because, for example, with Manipulator, I detune harmonics and they sound shit. That's a sound design question, and I would like to talk about sound design in a future video. But yeah. With the order of the effects on the channel elements that you have in your mixdown, that's also something I want to talk about in the future. I keep repeating myself. So I think that concludes this video. I hope you learned something from it. Just keep in mind that mastering is very specific to what you're going for, and you don't always need to go for super loud. It kind of depends on the style you're going for. If you want to have loud kicks, then don't think that you need to turn your kicks down just because you want the master to be louder. Like, if you like loud kicks, then go for it and keep your track a little bit more quiet. It's not like the loudness war is really silly. Like, I have a lot of tracks on Spotify and online that are pretty quiet, because I specifically wanted my kicks to be loud and I didn't want to lose the dynamics too much. And I think they're still fine. Like, if people want to have it louder, then just turn your speakers up or turn your phone up. Like, as long as your phone has the ability to turn it up still, so it's not so quiet that even if it's at maximum volume, it's super quiet, then you're fine, you know? There's no issue. Like, it's not that a track sounds better or worse just because it's louder or more quiet. You just kind of... The goal is to get the maximum volume out of it without losing the character of the track. And the character entirely depends on how you want your track to sound. Just keep that in mind when you master your tracks. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry I kept you waiting for so long at the beginning because I thought I was streaming. And I was talking for like half an hour until I realized that I wasn't actually streaming. So yeah, have a good day. Eat your fruits and veggies. Drink water. Water with lemon in it, for example. Very good. Do I have a fingerboard here? I don't. Bye.